Welcome to the Flourish with Neural Retraining podcast. I'm your host, Madeline Lowry, founder of Twin Cities Neural Retraining and a certified MAP method practitioner specializing in allergies and sensitivities, chronic fatigue, chronic pain, sleep issues, infertility, autoimmunity, and other chronic health conditions. Join me for episode 54, where we will talk with my client Lea Pandolfi about her experience with MAP sessions. Hear how she learned about the MAP method from her functional medicine practitioner and why she decided to try it for relationship OCD and anxiety. Listen to her comparison of the MAP method to EMDR, tapping, and talk therapy, and why she recommends MAP for anyone with anything. Now, Lea and I did about 7 sessions over 10 months. She took about a 5-month break after the first 4 sessions. Her primary interest was resolving obsessive-compulsive thought patterns that made her feel panicky. After 3 sessions, she reported that when her OCD thoughts were triggered, they were less panic-inducing. And after 4 sessions, she said her OCD was way less intense. We did a few more sessions on anxiety symptoms, and limiting beliefs, which she said improved her positivity and emotional resilience. As you'll hear, she feels freed from OCD thought patterns and has noticed other physical benefits as well from our sessions. As always, we must disclaim that the information we share in the podcast is for educational purposes only. As MAP method practitioners, we do not diagnose or treat disease. Instead, we work with the person and the personality to optimize health. Now, let's hear from Lea. Welcome, Lea. I'm so excited to have you join me today to talk about your experiences with the MAP method.
Yay, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we could find this time to just talk about how you heard about this unique method of advanced neural retraining and, just what you have observed after having 6 or 7 sessions. Yeah.
Sure. So I just want to let everyone know that Madeline is the sweetest person I've ever met in my entire life. So I'm so happy I get to work with her. I actually heard of the MAP method probably about 8 months ago, a little, maybe 9-10 months ago, from a functional medicine doctor, Dr. Balcavage, and he's also wonderful. And he suggested that I try the MAP method because his colleague actually did the MAP method, I think with you, Madeline. That's how we connected. And so that's how I found out about it. I did some research. I had my 15-minute consultation with Madeline, and I kind of just jumped on and wanted to try it.
Yeah. So you were working with Dr. Balcavage for,
yeah.
I think, for some time. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. On thyroid issues, right?
Yes, thyroid, PCOS, all the fun hormone stuff.
Yeah, and he's a very well-known physician in terms of thyroid function because he has a very, as you said, a functional approach and a different way of viewing thyroid issues. So yeah, that's very interesting. And his colleague, Dr. Kelly Halderman, she did work with me, and we talk about that in 2 podcasts, actually. One that's on my podcast, one of my podcast episodes, but the other is with Dr. Balcavage and his podcast.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that's very nice that he recommended this method. So
yeah.
When you decided to give it a go, what were you hoping to resolve with this method?
Sure. So actually, when I started, I'll just like go back a little bit. When I started working with him, it's because I was diagnosed with PCOS when I was, 12 years old. Thyroid conditions run in my family. So that's why I wanted to see him. I wanted to just, find a more natural way to deal with all these things. And then as we started working together, we were unveiling things that were coming up, and he noticed that and I obviously noticed that I was dealing with a lot of, emotional, mental health stuff. And he said that that can be a huge contributing factor to your physical health. So that's like really why I wanted to, come see you. And I still do regular therapy and, all the fun, regular stuff. But this was just like a different method. And the way he described it was just more like impactful. So what I was really dealing with at the time was relationship OCD. And that is what I originally wanted to come in and work with. And we definitely did that. And we have done other stuff too. So, it could be for a wide, array of things. But that's what I wanted to work on, the relationship OCD.
Yeah. So maybe you can talk about, what you observed, how you observed the sessions, maybe changing your experience around that. Do you kind of remember the first few sessions that we did?
For sure. The first few sessions were very interesting because, like I said, I've done regular therapy and, all that kind of stuff. So it was different. And I've also done EMDR. And I think I mentioned that to you the first time. And you said, it's kind of like it, but not really at all, but a little bit. So I was like nervous because I didn't really have a great experience with EMDR. So you kind of, reassured me that this was a much more gentle, approach, which I was very excited about. But our first few sessions were very calming. And I look forward to it. I look forward to, diving into what was going on, and then the after effect of how I felt after we had our sessions, and even, the next day. And I think you mentioned to me that sometimes after a nice nap or a good night's sleep, that's when you really feel, the effects. So I would love waking up the next day and just feeling a sense of calm and a sense of everything was okay. So that's what I really experienced the first couple times that we did our MAP sessions.
Yeah. And so how do you think it compared to EMDR? So you mentioned having gone through EMDR. I have actually never done EMDR, but my clients tell me, kind of like you, can be a rough experience. How would you compare and contrast these two methods?
Sure. So they're both, if we're comparing and contrasting, they're both confusing because to the person that's doing it, you don't really know what's happening. You don't know what is happening in your brain, and how the EMDR, the eye movement is working with your brain, and how the MAP is, speaking to your superconscious. So it could be, it's very abstract, both of them, for someone who is not practicing it. But, to contrast them, the EMDR for me was very difficult, and it opened up boxes of things. This is how my therapist kind of explained it. Opened up boxes of things that weren't ready to be opened, or when they were opened, it gives you such a reaction. I personally believe that when I started doing EMDR in 2016, that it triggered my depressive episode that I went through, because I opened some things and it kind of just kicks your butt a little bit. It's, your therapist tells you, to ground yourself after and do all these things after, because it's kind of intense. It doesn't feel like it in the moment, but I guess just your brain, it's opening all these things up, where the MAT method, completely different. It is a gentle situation. It is almost the complete opposite, because you feel no the EMDR was overwhelming, where MAT method is not at all, completely different. So that's really what I think the two, how they differ so much, is that one makes you feel after almost disorganized and upset, and the MAT method is very calming, and you're able to deal with things better, I think.
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you, offering that perspective because we do talk about the MAP method as being the next generation of EMDR or TFT or EFT techniques. But, I often like to say it is such a leap beyond that you would not, if I didn't tell you that, you would not know that those were the origins, right? It is.
Yes. Yes, it's completely different, and it feels completely different. And I've also done the tapping. I love that. That's just like a great coping skill, but I wouldn't, not that, I just wouldn't feel that it's doing as much as the MAP method, experiencing all three of them. That's where I feel like the most is improving for me. I think EFT is more of like you're in the middle of something like a panic attack or something, and like you need to like center yourself, where like the MAP is getting to like the root of what is happening, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe you can talk about what, the sessions have been like for you. You know, when you talk about getting to the root of what is happening, how does that happen in a session? Like, how do you experience that as the client?
Sure. So it can be a little confusing, even to me, when it's happening. But we start off with, I make an appointment because something was triggered, or something happened and I wanted to deal with that. And then by the end of the session, we're talking about something from my childhood, completely different. And obviously it's all connected, but you just like don't realize that you're going to be talking about what happened in kindergarten, or something like that. So basically, like what I've experienced is, like I said, like you come in with something that you want to like deal with, that you want to process and get through. And then I don't know how to explain it, but things just come up as you're doing whatever you're doing as a practitioner. I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you're doing, things will come up, and then it could be completely related, it could be unrelated, and then we process that, and it continues for a little bit, and that's what I feel is the most beneficial thing. Like, it obviously is all connected somehow, and your mind wants you to realize like all this stuff is connected. So that's like what I feel that I like see most happening in our sessions, like all these connections being made, and realizing that it's not just this one thing that's the problem. I mean, nothing's really the problem, but what you're dealing with, it's all connected to past traumas or situations, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so you I think you described that very well when you said, with MAP, you feel like we're getting to root causes that
Yeah.
maybe you don't get to in the same way with tapping or with
Yeah.
EMDR. I don't know, but I do think that the MAP method is all about root causes. With the MAP method, we are working directly with the subconscious mind, right? Unlike EMDR, unlike EFT, there's no need for bilateral stimulation or tapping on acupressure points. We don't need to do that anymore, right? This is the next generation. The brain can simulate all of that itself. So it's
Yeah.
not necessary, to do all these things. And during a session, you're hearing me. You said doing what I do as a practitioner. Well, what I'm doing is I'm kind of connecting in some way, like my subconscious mind and your subconscious mind are connecting, so I can get some basic level of information, I think, from your subconscious mind about where we need to take the session. And I'm giving instructions. You have identified a subject for this session. You have told me how it makes you feel, how strong those emotions are for you. That's how we frame up the subject of the session. And then as we go along, I'm offering instructions to your subconscious mind that your subconscious mind is completely free to accept or reject, right? Your subconscious mind is running the show.
Mm-hmm.
And it's your brain that is healing itself. This can be hard for people to understand, but the brain has a self-healing mechanism, and that is what we are using in MAP method sessions. And so as I kind of both get information from you consciously. After each round of instructions, you're giving me some feedback. Oh, this memory came up for me, or I felt this, or my mind, the words or this image or this
Mm-hmm.
insight came to me. Oh, okay. So that's, that's all that feedback is sort of factored in, right? And then we start to frame up the next round of instructions. And again, I'm giving your subconscious mind instructions, English language instructions, right? And you
Yeah.
hear exactly what I say. You may not, we have you watch a preparatory video so that you kind of get familiar with some of the vocabulary. We talk about parts and traumas and emotions and what we call the superconscious, which is really your subconscious mind. We have all these like terms that we use, but during the session, you're hearing what I am saying to your subconscious mind. You may not understand what the instruction is meant to do, but and people have different levels of they have different levels of or capacities even to register, to understand what the mind is doing, right? So sometimes people tell me, oh, during while you were giving instructions to my subconscious mind, I could feel that my brain was working on something, but I couldn't see what it is,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's one level of experiencing that, the processing that happens with these instructions. At another level, I have very gifted people who say, oh, as you gave this instruction, this came into my mind. As you gave this other instruction, my mind started to search, like I could see kind of like
Mm-hmm.
this Rolodex or this calendar being paged through and
Mm-hmm.
stopping, on this event, on this date, on this moment. And then the memory, is being, neutralized. Or people tell me, oh, I saw like a neural net, I saw the memory we were working with, and I saw all the connections to things that happened to me and as a child and in high school and with my family and with friends and past relationships and work and on and and the network grew, and I saw all the associations and I saw them all being sort of like reorganized and arranged. And so people have really different levels of perception of what's happening.
Yeah.
Other people are kinesthetic. They tell me, oh, I felt tingling in my hands. I felt a
Mm-hmm.
tightness in my throat. I felt something in my gut, or I felt tingling in the back of my head. It's just, yeah, everyone's different. And even from
Yeah.
session to session, you might feel differently. Does that
Oh
bring up
yeah.
any memories for you? Yeah.
For sure. And I just want to say, like, all of that can seem like it's very overwhelming. Like, if somebody hears that, like, oh my God, all this is going to go on. Like, it's not overwhelming, like, at all. So I just want to point that out, because if someone told me that, I'd be like, oh my God, I need to deal with all that. Like, it does not feel like it's an overwhelming situation. It feels like it kind of just like makes sense, like why it's happening. Like, you know what I mean? But yes, definitely I felt all different types of things. Sometimes in my mind, when you say things, like at an old timey like airport, you know how like they would like change like the flights and like, you know, all the flaps would like go. Like sometimes I feel like that happens in my brain, and I'm like searching for something. I definitely have like the tingly, you know, situation. Definitely sometimes even I'll like fall asleep. It's not like a real sleep, but it's like a deep relaxation where like you don't realize that you're awake or asleep. So it really just like depends, and you never know what you're gonna get. But not in an overwhelming sense. It's in a like exciting, this is interesting sense, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so I feel all of that, and I'm sure people, you know, have, like you said, different experiences, and you know, we're all different people, so we both feel things differently. But it's definitely a very interesting, you know, sensation and thing that's happening, but it's not overwhelming. So I wouldn't like deter anyone from, if they're, you know, oh, I don't know if I can handle that. Like, you can handle that. Like, it's nothing. Like, it just means it's working, I think. That's my perspective.
Yeah, I think, yeah, so that's right. So I think that basically what I want people to get is to understand is that, even though we're sitting on a Zoom video conference, like this is how we do sessions, right? Over Zoom video conference, even though I'm not in the same room with you, even though we
Yeah.
are not hooked up to any kind of equipment at all, except
No.
that you're sitting in front of your laptop or your phone on this Zoom video conference, that something is happening and you can perceive it in whatever way you perceive it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think overall, I guess the feedback that I hear the most is just, I feel so relaxed, or I feel so calm. That is how most people respond to each round of instruction. Like they maybe feel more agitated or anxious about whatever the topic is. And then as with each round of instruction, they just feel calmer and more relaxed. Is that fair? Does that sound like your experience?
Yes. Oh, yes. Very fair. Because even like you can go in wanting to deal with something like that you feel like desperately like I need to deal with this right now, and like you might start at like a 10, and by the time you're done you might be down to a 5 or maybe even like a 2. It really is like such an interesting thing that is happening. But yes, like a total sense of like relaxation, and like I said before, really like, and you don't have to take a nap right after, but a nap or like bedtime, like, and you wake up the next day or after your nap, and like it feels like it's more like ingrained in you, like what happened. Like I feel like your brain almost needs to like process it a little more, and then you wake up like, oh yeah, like this makes sense, like this calming, this totally makes sense type of vibe that I get.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the reason for that is because, during the session, we want you to be in a kind of a meditative state, right? So just relax, eyes closed, breathing slowly, deeply, and gently, right? You're calm, and focused on what is happening for you. That's all. And most of the processing is happening in the session. But I do think that when there are a lot of memories involved, that
Hmm.
subconscious mind will defer some of that to the next time you're in those deeper brainwave states, which is when you are asleep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So some people do tell me, I felt better, like you talked about, the emotions are at a 10 out of 10 when you come into the session. Maybe they're at a 5 or a 3 or 2 by the end. But then people do tell me, well, but the next day when I thought about the same topic, it was lower still. It's
Yeah,
because more processing happened overnight. Some people even tell me they need 2 or 3 days before they feel the full effect of the session.
of
Again,
course.
we're all different.
Everyone's different. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Hmm. Yeah. So, what benefits have you observed from these sessions? Emotionally, mentally, physically.
Sure. Plenty. Um, Something that I think is one of like the most beneficial things for like my mental health is when you email me the next day or a couple hours later and you say, okay, these are like the points that we hit and this is what I want you to like reinforce. And I think that, I don't know if this is true or just me in my head making this up, but I just think that like you say, it reinforces like what we did, and I think that positively affects my mental health. Just reminding myself that whatever it may be, that I'm strong or I'm resilient or so many things we've touched on. But just like we did all that work, and then of course things still pop up. Like that's just part of life, right? And you have those reminders that you give that you need to remind yourself after. So that's like one thing, like mentally, for sure, something that I think positively affects me. Also my relationship OCD. That's what I said I originally came to you for, and I am now very happily secure in my relationship. I'm getting married in 3 months, and I could not be more excited. So that's just something that is a little random thing that has positively affected me. So yeah, just like mental health, emotional health, I think those are just all things that I'm sure like my physical health too, but it's nothing that I guess like I'm not working with you on that, so it's not something I would like want to see a change, like, you know what I mean? So it's more like the emotional and mental health that I think are always a positive after every session. I see, even if it's like a little bit, it's something that you can grab onto and like be like, oh, this works, and it's a positive change. So those are the two things that I see most.
Yeah. So, you were referred to me by Dr. Balcavage, and I wonder, have you noticed any improvement in thyroid function?
It's so interesting, thyroid function. Because like I don't really know about thyroid function because the thyroid, like your thyroid, like pretty much controls like all your hormones. Like it's crazy. I don't know if this is TMI, but I do now have like a more regular period. So that is something that I was not dealing with when I first saw him and saw you. So that is something that I think, one, I know stress and emotions and all that stuff affect your period. So if I am dealing, working with you, like dealing with all this stuff, I'm sure that had a big impact alongside with what I did with him. Those two things go very well together.
Yeah. So this is not uncommon. This is not the first time I've heard that. In fact,
Oh,
I have another podcast that I recorded with Kristen Cornett about the MAP method for fertility, because like you said, when we are in a stress response, the body is geared up to run away from an emergency, right?
mm-hmm.
In that state, it's sacrificing all other restorative functions, and that includes hormonal balance.
Yes.
That just goes right out the door. Digestion goes out the door, nutrient uptake, detoxification, fluid balance, neurotransmitter production. I mean, basically everything is jettisoned, right? Because we are trying to survive a life-threatening threat. That's how the body is wired. And so I do think that as we start to lift, these kind of layers, I think we're all kind of multi-layered, right? As we kind of lift these multiple layers of subconsciously held stressors that are acting on us, that the body starts to come back into its into health, because we are spending more, now we can spend more time in the parasympathetic mode, the rest, digest, and heal mode, right? So there is more functions of the body come back online, become more optimized. And so our ability to heal, whether we're talking about wound healing or hormonal balance, which is important for fertility. That's why Kristen and I were talking about that in the other podcast episode. Or digestion, or anything else. It is positively enhanced, by resolving subconscious sources of stress. And this is the kind of stress that people don't think about when they are told to work on reducing their stress load. Like we think about finances or work or relationships or deadlines or traffic or whatever it is, we think about, but we are not aware of the subconsciously held stressors. Does that sound fair?
Yeah. I also think that like people don't want to deal with that stuff because it can be painful to deal with. So they just want to almost pretend it didn't happen, and they would rather focus on, oh, well, my job is stressful, or, my kids are annoying, or like, whatever it may be. But it's really the stuff that is held in, and that's the stuff that's affecting you. Of course, regular stress affects you, but that's like the deep stuff that you do kind of need to deal with in order to be able to deal with a stressful job or sitting in traffic or whatever it may be. So that's what I believe, that it is almost more important to focus on that rather than the immediate stressors. And also, it's so much easier to deal with immediate stressors than, who wants to go back and deal with all that stuff that happened in the past, and it's painful. You don't want to deal with it, so.
Yeah, I think that's true. Fortunately, though, with the MAP method, we do have a perfect tool for going back and dealing with it.
Of course. And that's what, people spend years and years in therapy, I think, and which is wonderful, and everything has its place, but the MAP method's kind of speeds things up a little bit and is able almost to maybe go into your mind, tell me if I'm wrong, but go into your mind and find things that maybe you suppress so much that you want to forget about it, but your body needs to like heal it. So that's why random things can come up in a session that you haven't thought about in 100 years because you need to deal with it. Am I right about that?
I think so. Yeah. It's funny because, I work with a lot of people who've been through a lot of trauma, right? That's just
Yeah.
the kind of client base that I have because I work with people with chronic health conditions and there's an overlap there, right? But, and so people will come in with lists of all their big T traumas, right?
Yes. Yes.
And you know where I'm going with this, right? And then in a
Okay.
session, as we explained, we have these different rounds of instruction, and the subconscious mind is starting to show you the connections, right? Behind whatever the topic is, whatever the subject is that you seek to resolve. And very often things come up for people that are not on the list of big T traumas. These are
Yep.
little T traumas, right? The criticism you received in a preschool for your craft project or whatever, right? These are small traumas, but it's not the trauma itself. It is what your mind decided about it, right? That's where the limiting factor is. And so even for people who are like, well, I have an ACEs score, adverse childhood experiences score of 0 or 1, even for the person that is not aware that they've had any trauma experiences in their life, there are definitely, right? There are definitely things that your subconscious mind is holding on to, and they're affecting you, maybe even your health, in your present life.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I just think it's funny because that is what happened. Our other session where I came in talking about something completely different, and I was just like, wow, like you stopped and said, okay, like what came up for you? And I was like, when I was in kindergarten, I was doing a project and I cut my mitten too small, and my teacher, told me in front of everybody that I had the smallest mitten in class and I'm not a good cutter. And I haven't thought about that in years. Like, what the heck does that have to do with anything? But obviously, my brain did something with that memory, and made me feel a way about myself or, something. But I didn't come in and say, Madeline, like, we need to discuss what happened in kindergarten. Like, that didn't happen. So it is funny how, like, you come in with these big things and then go out with, oh my God, like, I didn't even think that would affect me 20 years later. So it is funny how that happens. But yeah, because people want to also deal with the big traumas. That's what you come in with. That's what you want to deal with. But you need to also deal with, obviously, those little T traumas. That's so funny you say that. My therapist used big T traumas and little T traumas too. So I like that phrasing.
Yeah. It's the big T traumas are the ones that we spend a lot of time in therapy,
Yeah.
hashing and rehashing. And and it's important for people to understand that the programming of that subconscious mind, it's not just about the big T traumas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have an impact, right? I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying that there is more to it than that. And so with the MAP method, your mind will just take you. I mean, can you explain what this is like? Like your mind will just take you, to the memory or the incident or the person, right, that you need to resolve.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And that's the thing, like you go in thinking one thing and like you come out with other things that obviously need to be processed. But yeah, you don't know where it's going to take you. That's also the fun of the MAP method. You don't know what is going to be brought up. But again, I just want to like reiterate, none of it is scary. Like none of it feels overwhelming at all. Like it is all like a manageable like thought process that happens. It's not like a frightening thing, that happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we make that. It's very. It's like the center point of the MAP method, right? We keep stressing how gentle,
Mm-hmm.
even as we're giving instructions, we're saying, is this going to be safe? Please only treat what's safe. And, please treat it very gently. And so, and like I said, it's your subconscious mind that is in charge. Your subconscious mind that decides how far to take things during each session. Some people may, the pacing. So that's the other thing I want people to understand is like the pace or of what is accomplished in a session or how quickly you advance or improve or whatever. That is all completely set by your own subconscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
Your subconscious mind is deciding how far to take it. What will be okay for you today. So, and people are feeling like, oh, why am I not experiencing the same thing as what I heard on the podcast episode that I heard? Well, everyone's experience is different because we are all unique. We all have a unique set of experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all have a different level of sensitivity to things that happen to us. Some people are very sensitive. Some people are much more robust. But anyway, your subconscious mind is aware of everything that's ever happened to you and how it's affecting you. And so it's the gatekeeper. I can't make it happen faster for you. That's not,
for sure.
Yeah, that's not the role of the practitioner. It is, we are facilitating, we are offering instructions to the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind is doing what's appropriate for you. So your experience is the right experience for you.
100%. And I for anyone out there who may be frustrated that, oh, like this isn't working fast enough or whatever. It's not working fast enough for me either. I want, to be one session and I'm completely better and whatever, but that's just not, how it is. And I don't want people to be like, oh, this is like a quick fix, like, or anything like that. This is a tool for me, what I think that has helped me so much deal with all these different things and has given me a little bit of hope that I can deal with it in like a gentle fashion. But I have healed many things with the MAP method. Like I said, my relationship OCD and other things like that. But we just had a session, a couple days ago because something else came up. So it's an ongoing process. And I think people, especially with chronic health conditions, they suck, and you want to be able to fix them and find something. But kind of just like trusting the process with the MAP method, I think is a really good suggestion, for people, especially people with chronic health conditions and that go through trauma. It's not just an easy, quick little thing that you're going to be able to fix. Unfortunately, I wish that, we all had a magic wand. But I think it's like an amazing tool and it can help you recover much faster than doing, like I said, EMDR or anything like that. And if it works for some people, amazing. Like we keep saying, everybody's different, but this is what has, I've seen the most benefit with is definitely with the MAP method.
Yeah. So, what would you say to someone who has never experienced a MAP method session before? I mean, what would you recommend it for? And, what advice do you have for someone who's wondering if they should try it?
Sure. So it's a loaded question because like I said before, I don't know what happens in it. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know how it happens, how you do it, how my brain does it. I know it just works. Anyone that is experiencing anything, I know that's really broad, but anything, if you are, dealing with a stressful situation in your life, I think that it can help you there. If you're dealing with some type of physical situation, I think that it can help you there. If you have a giant trauma that you can't get over, for me now, what I really am working on is like healing my inner child. That's something that I'm working on. I think a lot of people should be working on. So that's what I'm using it for right now. And, going back and dealing with, like I said, in the kindergarten class or when I was bullied or, whatever it may be, that is something that it really helps because it brings all these things up that you obviously need to deal with. So really, if you're dealing with anything, I think that it's a great method to use. My suggestion for anyone is, if you need to watch the introductory video before your first session, if you need to watch it before your first 3 sessions, do it. I think sometimes I still watch it before like a session just because, again, it's confusing and the video gives you, no answers at all. It's just as confusing, but it kind of like preps your mind. And I think that's what the whole thing is, right? It preps your subconscious and your mind to be able to really grasp onto what's happening. So that's why I like to watch it, because I think that it's doing something in there. It's prepping me for my sessions. So that's something that I would do. And I just want to mention, because I didn't mention this before, our first MAP session, I watched the wrong video. I don't know if you remember. And I did not watch the right video. And I think I still got some benefit from that session. It was very calming. I felt great. But my second session, I made sure to watch the video, and I could tell you that the, outcome was much greater than the first one. So that's just a little anecdote that you might want to, mention. Make sure you definitely watch the video. But also, like I said, I still watch it if I need a refresher on something. So yeah, that's what I would recommend. Do it for, anything. And it's not, like I said, it's not scary. It's a very calm, gentle thing. So even if you try it once, it's, nothing bad is going to happen. It's only going to help. So those are my suggestions.
Yeah. Okay. So you talked about the introductory video, and that's it's an important piece to bring up. So this is something that's unique to this method as well. Everyone needs to be initiated to the MAP method just once.
Yeah.
And that just means that we need to take some steps to prime your subconscious mind so it becomes receptive to the instructions that I give in a session, or that any certified MAP method practitioner gives. So you watch a 15-minute video. So when you schedule your first introductory session, which is 1 hour, you get a confirmation email. It has a link to a video with a password. That's how you know you're watching the right video. And there's a password you have to put in. And then you watch this 15-minute video, and it explains how memories help to form behaviors and the personality, basically. So it's educational. It gets you familiar with some of the terms we're going to be using in the session. And it's essential that you watch it through, completely before you come to your first session. You only need to watch it once, but there's no harm in watching it more than once. And then you come to the session. We do a few more preparatory steps at the beginning of the very first session, your very first MAP session ever. And that's it. Then your subconscious mind is now receptive to the instructions I'm going to give. And as you said, there is a big difference between session where you watch the wrong video and a session where you watch the right video.
For sure. I definitely felt it, but yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. So if, that answers the question, do I really need to watch this video? The answer is yes. Yes, please do.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, great. Well, Lea, thank you so much for coming and joining me today, taking your time to share your experiences. This has been really lovely. And I do appreciate everything that you shared with us today about your experiences with the MAP method.
Of course. And, I'm glad if I can help one person, trust in the process. I'm happy I did it. So thank you for having me.
Of course.
Thanks for joining us for the Flourish with Neural Retraining podcast. Please listen again and remember to follow us and leave a review on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or Stitcher. To learn more about health applications of the MAP method of advanced neural retraining, visit our website, mindremapforhealth.com. Until the next time, be well and flourish. Content of this podcast copyright 2022 by Twin Cities Neural Retraining. Music by Barbara Ben.